Good evening, everybody. I'm David Shephard, and welcome to this week's Everything You Ever Want to Know About NLP, Timeline Therapy, Hypnosis, and Huna, but We're Afraid to Ask. And for those of you who are new, welcome. If this is your first time here, if this is your second or maybe even third time here, then welcome back. For those of you new, just to give you a little bit of information, a little bit of background, every Thursday evening, 7 p.m. GMT, I'm going to do everything you've ever wanted to know about NLP, timeline therapy, hypnosis, and Huna, but we're afraid to ask. And these are around about 15-20 minutes, and they're generated by questions that come in from my Facebook friends. So tonight, it was a weird one, to be honest with you, because I got a question a couple of weeks ago for everything you've ever wanted to know about NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy, and Huna, but we're afraid to ask. And to be honest with you, I was afraid to answer it. And then, though, I got so many repeats of this question that I thought I need to deal with that. I'm going to have to answer it. So the question that I got asked was, from an NLP perspective, what was it that caused BREXIT, the vote for BREXIT, and the vote for Trump? Because many people were taken by surprise with this. Even the expert predictors were surprised. I remember going to bed, going to sleep, looking at the referendum for Remain or Brexit, and Remain were in the lead, and I thought that's a foregone conclusion. And then I woke up in the morning, looked at my phone, and we got Brexit. And a very similar thing happened with Trump. Now, just to put the frame around this is not a political broadcast. It's not either pro-Remain, pro-Brexit, pro-Clinton, pro-Trump. It's merely an analysis, or my thinking, around how we might be able to explain how these things happen from an NLP point of view. I've seen many of my friends get completely flamed on Facebook for putting their opinions about these two things. So if I have any political rants on my page, I will actually delete those because it's not what this is about. Sally's just telling me who we've got here. We've got Claire Hegarty. Hi Claire, hope you're well. Angela Waterford's here, and Susan Shirley. Sunny is here, and so is Emma France. Emma was the question from last week. And Regina, I hope you're feeling a bit better and things are going well for you. You're going to manage to get sorted out. So this is about how we might be able to explain what happened from an NLP point of view in the referendum here and the election here. And I watched these two things with great interest because I'd already been doing some research around politics when I was putting together my Masters of Influence training, which we have actually coming up this weekend. Because I was analysing particularly two leaders in the field of politics, one Barack Obama and the other Tony Blair, because there were rumours around that they were using Ericksonian hypnosis and NLP anchoring techniques in their presentations and their speeches. So I analysed those, and I would say that my opinion on that is absolutely they are, and using those things in an exquisite way. That might be something that we can talk about in the future. Everything you've ever want to know about NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy, and hypnosis. I'm also doing an analysis to see whether we can identify the same things in Trump's pre-election speeches. Who else have we got? We got Lisa Whitehead. Hi Lisa, how are you? Sarah, way down there down in Cornwall or wherever you are. Katie Batten and Rick. Rick, how are you? I thought you were still skiing, my man. Yeah. So today's will not be about language patterns, though I am looking at whether we can do a similar kind of analysis for Trump as I did for Tony Blair and also for Barack Obama. Here's the perspective that I got from watching these two events in 2016 from an NLP point of view. Now, the strange thing is that they were absolute mirror images of each other, almost copies of each other, as to what happened and the way the two kind of like sides or the two parties were presenting their particular message. And what I want to look at is, the impact of that, what we can then learn from that, and also then, how we might be able to use it in our own lives. Because what we're looking at here is influence. How are we influenced to make decisions? And in anything like the Brexit, like Trump, then there's two things that we're influencing. Firstly, how do we influence people to actually go out and vote? Because the majority of people are quite lethargic and they don't actually go out to vote. There's more important things to them. So how do we actually get people to vote in the first place? And then also, how do we get people to vote a particular way? Now, influence, the key to influence is emotional engagement and also about motivation. How do we motivate somebody to go out and vote, and how do we motivate them to vote in a particular direction? And so if we were to look at that, then the key motivator, the key driver for us, as far as motivation is concerned, if we were to look at an adaptation of Robert Dilts's neurological levels, is that we've got the results out here at the outside. That's what we're most interested in. And the results that a person gets, what we get from influencing someone, is determined by that person's behavior. And their behavior is determined by their skills and abilities. In this particular instance, I think we could probably safely say that everybody has the skills and abilities once they're over the age of 18 to go out and vote. So that's a given. So what do we have below these things, though? What we have below the skills and abilities are these things called beliefs. We can almost think of those as almost like on-off switches that switch on and off the skills and abilities, switch on or off the behaviors. So, for instance, if we just looked at the level of beliefs, if we've got an absolute firm believer in not voting, are we going to be able to use influencing techniques to get them to vote? Probably not. If we've got someone who doesn't really have a strong belief either way, as in they're sitting on the fence, is it possible to influence them, push them towards voting? Then I would say yes, most definitely. If we had somebody whose belief was totally against Brexit, would we be able to use influencing techniques to push them over the edge towards Brexit? I don't think so. And though, if we got somebody who was sitting on the fence and wasn't really sure which way they were going to go, could we push them in the direction of Brexit? I believe that we could. If we got a staunch believer in voting for Clinton, would we be able to use influencing techniques to push them over to voting for Trump? I don't believe that's actually possible. If, however, we got somebody who's sitting on the edge and didn't know who they were going to vote for, is it possible to push them in one direction, i.e. towards Trump? Then I do believe that's absolutely possible. So this is the things we're looking for. And both of these things, the Brexit and Trump, were won by a fairly small margin, by a fairly small population being pushed one way. So this is where beliefs tie into this. Then, from a motivation point of view, what drives the behavior? What drives the energy? What gets people to, for want of a better word, get off their ass and go and vote one way or another? And the key to that is values. What's the person's values? These values create the juice, if you like, that drive the behaviors. So what we're looking at here is, how do we tie into values? Because values come with strong emotions. They are the things that we feel most strongly about. They're the things that are at the deepest level of the unconscious mind. Yeah? So how do we key into values and how do we drive behavior in a particular way? Now, I've been asked actually a question just literally 2 minutes before we came on from Diane Beck, about how we could answer this from a Claire Graves values levels perspective. I was thinking about that one, Diane. I think it's a little bit more than we can probably do this evening, but certainly there was a values levels element to this, which I think we can probably save for a later one if we have a good number of people interested in that. But what I want to look at is these things with regard to Brexit and with regard to Trump. So our values are the things that are most important to us. And they're emotional. And they're emotional. And you know, here's the thing why this is most important. Recent advances in neuroscience have actually demonstrated that every single decision that we make is made on emotions. They're made at the unconscious level and they're made emotionally. People then actually process consciously to come up with a conscious, logical, rational, sensible justification for their emotional decision. And values are emotional. So this is how we engage people emotionally. Now, motivation, and they're the key to motivation. And this is where I think those two elections were either won or lost, in that our motivation comes in two directions. The avoidance of pain and the gaining of pleasure. Now, what I noticed from the campaigns for both of these, and this is the interesting thing that was almost spooky, to be honest with you. So what we had with the Remain campaign was pretty much based around one thing and one thing only, which was avoiding pain. They were saying, if we leave, it's going to be very, very painful. There was no towards staying, really. It was all around the pain of leaving. Whereas, the Brexit side did have some away from on remaining, particularly around immigration, if you remember, and towards what it would be like to go with Brexit. If you remember the whole thing about let's make Britain great again. That's the towards. So the Remain, pretty much away from, the Brexit, away from, and towards. Now, all of us have elements of both of these inside of us. The away from will get us moving in the first place. It will get us some traction, but then the towards creates the momentum. What we also had here is that then Barack Obama came out, I think it was the week before the election, with a massive threat to the British people as to what America would do if we left the EU. Again, totally away from. Now, if we looked at Clinton and Trump, again what we had was it changed about a week to 2 weeks before the actual election, but Clinton was very away from. It was all about the pain of voting for Trump. The pain of voting for Trump. The awful things that would happen if Trump got in and she didn't. It was very away from. Whereas Trump was away from, but then also had towards. I mean, so spooky, let's make America great again. Interesting, parallel. And then, the week before the election, I think it was, if my memory serves me correctly, Barack Obama threatens the people of America as to what would happen, the bad things that would happen if they voted for Trump. Total parallels from what we had here in the UK and the American election. Now, let's look at the impact of this. Because both of these gain motivation. Yeah? They get people to take action. But if we've got a completely away from strategy, a completely away from motivation pitch for want of a better word. Here's what happens. Let's say we've got this point here, which is A, and A is an absolutely dreadful, awful place to be. Terrible place. The first thing that anybody would want to do is to get away from A. Now, if you think about it, how many ways are there to get away from A? Infinite. Infinite directions. So therefore, away from motivation is directionless. Now, also, a little bit of a working of the human mind is that our mind, our brain, can't process a negative. So if I said to you, don't think of a blue tree, what are you thinking of right now? That's right, a blue tree. So with away from motivation, what we're creating in the internal representations within people's mind is don't want to be an A, don't want to be an A, don't want to be A, don't want to be A, don't want to be A. What does that mean? We're focusing on what we're paying attention to, A. So no matter how much we try and get away from here, we wind up where we started. How many times have you heard people say, oh, not again. I can't believe I've wound up here again. I've been working so hard to not be at this place. Yeah. So, don't vote for Trump, don't vote for Trump, don't vote for Trump, don't vote for Trump. Then what are we having people focus on? That's the internal representation. Whereas towards, let's say that B is a wonderful place to be. And the first thing anybody want to do is they go, I want to be at B. How many ways are there of getting to B? Well, infinite. But all of them wind up in the same place, B. The other downside to away from motivation is that the motivation is inconsistent. So if we were to put it in a different context, money and time, and we have somebody here who's very strongly away from motivated, away from being poor, and they have no money, how motivated are they going to be? That's right, massively motivated. And when people are massively motivated, they take action. When you take action around something, you get what you're taking action around, so people start to make money. But what happens to that level of motivation, the more money they have, is that it tails off. People stop taking action, the motivation's disappeared because they're far away from the thing that they want to move away from. So they stop taking action. When you stop taking action to make money, guess what? You stop making money. But also it's bored, it's inactive. And of course, the amount of money the person has drops, and they'll get to a certain threshold point where they go, I'm going to be poor again, and the action kicks in. So away from motivation is inconsistent. Let's look at that in the context of these two events here. So the Remain campaign, the Clinton campaign, was very much away from motivated, away from Brexit, away from Trump, which motivated people who wanted to vote for Remain and vote for Clinton to go out and vote. But it got to a certain point, I think, and this is just a complete mind read, this is just my thinking, I could be completely wrong, then I think it got to a certain point where the Remainers and the Clintonites, if we want to use that particular term, if that's a particular right term for them, actually thought that they were safe. They thought that Remain was going to get in. They thought that Clinton was going to get in. And the motivation to take action, the motivation to go vote, disappeared. And how many people actually said, well, I didn't go and vote because I didn't think I needed to. That is this thing in action. So many people afterwards went like, I just didn't expect people to vote for Brexit. I didn't expect people to vote for Trump. So I didn't go to vote myself because I didn't think I needed to. Didn't think I needed to. Need is away from motivation. So that is my perspective, part of my perspective, and as I say, I'm going to do some further research around possibly the use of hypnotic language patterns, etc., 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 around how NLP principles, NLP techniques could have led to these two things happening. Now, obviously, unless we're in politics, I know some people who watch my live feed are, I might have given away some useful secrets. How can we use these things ourselves to influence people around taking the action that we want? So, everyone is motivated to a percentage away from and a percentage towards. So when we want to influence somebody, we really want to influence them using both of these, because there are some people who are more away from than towards, and there are some people who are more towards than away from. So we'd want to use both elements, both directions as far as that's concerned. It's interesting that I had a mentor or a coach in the early 90s that coached me and mentored me around selling, because I'd never sold before. And his sales strategy was 100% away from. What he would do is he would go into a company and have the company realize just how bad things were in the business. And then he would amp it up and make it harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. And so in actual fact, when he was there, they were going, things are way worse than we thought they were. They were in huge pain and saw him as their savior. And so they hired him at very high day rates. The interesting thing was, he didn't get repeat business because he made them feel bad. And people don't like feeling bad. What happened was it went, oh, I don't want him to come round, he makes us feel bad. But equally, in their mind, he was the go-to person when they were in trouble. Once he got them out of trouble, they didn't want him around anymore. So we want to use both of these. But we need to use them in a particular order and sequence. Because people who are more away from need to feel pain to take action. If we just offer them carrots, then they won't take action. They need to be threatened with a stick to get them moving, but it feels bad. And those bad feelings will be associated to us. Now, people who are more towards motivated will not respond to being threatened with a stick. They respond to carrots. And carrots feel good. And we want to leave people feeling good, whether they're more away or towards motivated. So here is the technique, if you like. So there's a particular action that we want a particular person or group of people or audience to take. And we're going to use the two directions. We need to think of some sticks and we need to think of some carrots. So here is a general template for using this. Firstly, we want to fire off the away from. So what we do is we tell them all the awful, terrible, horrible things they'll experience if they don't take the particular action that we want. Then we tell them all the amazing, wonderful things that will happen when. Notice that. If, when. In question, certainty. When they do. Dot, dot, dot. That's pretty much the template that the Brexit side used and also Trump used. Awful things that will happen if you don't vote for me, or if you vote for Clinton, and the awful, amazing, wonderful things that will happen when you do vote for Brexit or for Trump. And all of those presentations, all of those speeches were on this, whereas Remain and Clinton was predominantly just that. Clinton did actually change that perspective within the first week, within the last week to 2 weeks of the campaign, and started bringing in more of the towards. Rumour has it that she was given some advice by one of Bill's friends, otherwise known as Tony Robbins. Who knows whether that's true or not. But Robbins is fairly good friends with Trump too, so we never know as far as those things are concerned. But she did start bringing in more of this kind of stuff, and but I think it was a little bit too late. What we can also look at, as I say, it goes beyond what we can do this evening for this particular live broadcast, is look at the values content that was used, because there was a definite different values level used by Trump than Clinton. There was definitely a different values levels content used by Remain rather than Brexit. And we can look at those if that's of interest to people in a later one of our weekly broadcasts. So there you have it. That's my perspective on those two potentially life-changing events that happened in 2016. Obviously, you know, as I say, values are emotional, and you know, some people's values have been met by the results. Some people's values have been massively violated by the results. So some people have got real positive emotions by what happened, and some people have got really intense negative emotions of what's happened. And I think particularly on Facebook, we've seen that being played out on people's walls, with people saying things that, quite honestly, I was quite surprised that they would say those kind of things about other people, even NLP people, even some of my students who seem to have suddenly lost this idea of everyone's got a unique model of the world and we should respect other people's models of the world. But there we go. So I hope that's been useful for you. If you've got any further questions, then put them in below the video and I will certainly get on to answering any of those. Also, if there's a particular question that you've got about NLP or timeline therapy or hypnosis or Huna that you would like me to feature in next week's Everything That You've Ever Wanted to Know About NLP, Hypnosis, Timeline Therapy and Huna Were Afraid to Ask, then also either personal message me on Facebook, that's a pretty good way of getting those things to me, or put it into the feed, question feed or the comments feed underneath the video. So thanks for joining me this evening. As I say, I really hope that's been useful for you, giving you some ideas about how you can up your own influencing skills. We've got our Masters of Influence this weekend. We've still got some places, so if you want to book on that, it starts on Saturday. And other than that, I will see you next week, 7 p.m. GMT on Thursday, here on Facebook Live. Thanks very much, and see you soon.